and then afterwards I'm going to talk about it. So I'm going to go ahead and just place everyone where I think they are, and then I might make adjustments as I'm talking about it, but that's the plan for now. And then we will go through and sort of talk about stuff as things are happening. So just bear with me a minute so I can go through. And sort of figure all this out. I guess... do I want to have it? I guess I'll do it like this. It's fine. Yeah, I think this is probably the play. I'll do it this way. I don't feel like listening to this song. Is that right? It's probably about right. It's tricky between those two. She's probably better than Hillbilly. Is Hillbilly above all of these? It's kind of hard. Because, like, Hag's not... Could do something like this, then? Maybe? Where'd that put Oni, though? Oni's kind of tricky. Same thing with Pyramid Head. Alright, we'll do it like this, and then we'll go through each individual killer, and then I might move people sort of based off of what we find when we do this stuff. So, okay. Alright, so now that all this is done, again, for the sake of just, like, I'm going to highlight this, so just for the sake of explaining everything. So DBD is kind of weird. This game does not have a defined win-loss state. I've talked about this before, just sort of casually on stream, but I've never really gone down the rabbit hole on it, so I'm kind of going to go into the rabbit hole now. So basically, as I said, Dead by Daylight is really, there's no defined win-loss. You'll hear a million different things based on who you talk to. You'll hear some people say that, for this is from killer perspective, obviously. You'll hear some people say that, one kill or less is a loss, 2 kills is a draw, and 3 kills or more is a win. For other killers, you'll hear, oh, if I pip, it's a win. For some people, you hear, oh, if I don't 4K, it's a win, or it's a loss. For some people, it's, oh, I have to get 12 hooks, or it's a loss. For my perspective, this is my take on what a win is. It is no survivor leaves via the door after all 5 generators have been completed. So, for example, say if there's 1 survivor left and I didn't slug for the 4K and they leave through the hatch, that's still a win. I just didn't feel like slugging for the 4K. Or even if I close the hatch and my door spawns are like terrible and it's a gigantic map and they leave through one of the doors, sure, whatever. That's still a win in my book. I do also try to get as many hooks as possible. Obviously, that doesn't always work. And sometimes, if you watch me stream regularly, you'll hear me say something to the effect of, like, oh, this is the right play, but I'm just going to chase this person instead. So something I need to sort of put out here, just flat. This is not a competitive game. I know there are tournaments of this game. This is not a competitive game. As much as a lot of people might try to make it into one, there is way too much RNG in this game. This isn't even taking into account the fact that this game is constantly broken and a buggy piece of shit. Ignoring all of that, the core game mechanic of the way that maps work in this game prevent this from being a competitive game. You can have some games where even on a good map, right, say Coal Tower, everybody loves Coal Tower, it's a great map. Sometimes you can just have a shit spawn where, say, like, in one corner of the map there's just nothing. I'm sure you guys have seen Coal Towers before where on Shack side, on the opposite on the opposite side but still on the same side as Shack, on like the other corner of it, where there's like a gen and a bunch of trees, and then that's the area. There's no pallets, no windows, and then the closest thing to it's like an L wall T wall. And just like, okay, well, that's just a massive dead area, so we just can't do that gen, right? Like, literally this map, or this game, is so unbelievably uncompetitive, it's wild. And don't even get me started on the whole auto-aim hit dressing thing. Like, that's an issue entirely that needs to, like, get tweaked. And then, fucking, they have gotten better with, like, latency and shit, but some of it's pretty rough, to be honest with you. Anyway, yeah, so not a competitive game. Take everything with a pinch of salt. Obviously, in certain situations, some killers will be better. This is not taking into account how easy some killers are, because certain killers are just easier to play than others. That was why Freddy had such a crazy win rate for so long, just because, again, he's very, very, very straightforward, and also strong, so he just had a really high win rate. Oh, one other thing. So, now, this also needs to take into account the idea of, like, perks and add-ons. So the way that I'm doing this is I'm assuming that you're bringing perks, but we're only counting the killers with add-ons that are brown, yellow, or green. If it is a purple add-on that makes your killer good, I'm not counting it. I'm sorry. I can't. You cannot reliably always have a purple add-on unless you just don't play the killer, play other characters or Survivor, and then just put points into them to try to get purple add-ons. Like, it's unrealistic that you will always have purple or above add-ons. It's just not something that can happen. But any perks are fair game. In theory, if you have a bunch of time in this, you can basically have all the perks on the killers that you at least play, even if you don't have everything on everyone. You should, if you like a killer, just max them out. Like, it's not that bad to do. It's maybe like, I don't know. Realistically, so the big problem you run into is you got to actually own all the killers, but assuming you own all the killers and assuming they're all already at least 40, realistically, it only takes, if you have barbecue and chili, like, I don't know, maybe 50 hours to max out a killer. Like, it's not that bad, so just max out your killers. Okay, so starting from the top, This one's pretty much undisputable. I will say real quick, just to mention something. For anyone that says that Spirit is better than Nurse, the only context in where that's true is because Spirit is easier to play. Spirit at least still somewhat has to play by the rules of the game. Nurse doesn't have to do shit. She just ignores everything and doesn't give a fuck. All right, fuck it. We'll go into this. All right, so we'll start Nurse map control. All right, so Nurse and map control, she has some of the best map control in the game. It's not the best, but it's like top 3, right? She can literally blink across the map very, very quickly. If there's a building, she does not have to walk around to go through doors to actually enter it. She just blinks through the wall. Nurse does not give a shit. She just goes where she pleases. So yeah, Nurse, like 9 out of 10. Some of the best map control in the entire game. It's so good. The only thing she struggles with is very, very large open maps. So say like Rotten Fields. It'll take her a few blinks to get there, so it's not technically the fastest, but it's very, 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 very good. Okay, next we have Chase Power. Nurse, 10 out of 10. Best Chase Power in the game. She's basically just unstoppable when it comes to chases. A good Nurse, there's nothing you can do. She will blink to, even if you have, so the only thing you can do to a Nurse in a chase is try to break line of sight, but versus a good Nurse, all she's going to do is blink to the corner where the line of sight will be reestablished, and then correct on the second blink. And there's you can't gain enough distance, there's nothing you can do. The only time it'll take a good Nurse more than her, 2 blinks to get you is if you're so far away that she has to go through fatigue and then double blink at you again. Other than that, you're not getting away. So 10 out of 10, best chase in the game. Snowball potential. Okay, Nurse has, again, some of the best snowball potential in the game. Because of how mobile she is and how quickly she can end chases, she doesn't have a one-shot. That's the only thing that would make her better, but she... It doesn't. I can't say she effectively has a one shot because she doesn't, but she can down people so quickly that you don't have time to like pick someone up off the ground, right? Because every Nurse on the planet runs Nurses. She just kills you. Like if you and another survivor are next to each other and she downs the first survivor and then sees you, the only real play is to just run as far away as possible before she downs you so that you're not down next to each other. Because if she downs 2 people in the same area, the game's basically just over. All she has to do is hang out, and then there's just nothing anyone else can do. She can just sit there, and it's just doomed. Okay, next. Game-breaking mechanics. So Nurse, this is obviously for Nurse at 10 out of 10. This is the least relevant category for most killers. But in this case, it's very important. Nurse does not actually play Dead by Daylight. She plays Nurse. There's no looping. You can try to juke her. It's definitely possible, but it's not really effective. It's kind of just doomed. Like, she goes through pallets. She goes through walls. There's not really anything you can do. So, yeah, she just fundamentally breaks the game. 10 out of 10. This character's stupid. The only thing holding her back is she's incredibly difficult to play and incredibly punishing if you play her poorly. Because she moves slower than survivors, I think she's a 95 killer, so she moves at like 3.8 meters per second, whereas a normal running survivor is 4.0. If you whiff like a couple blinks in a row and a survivor breaks line of sight and you lose track of them, it can feel really rough, but in the hands of a skilled player, she's just unstoppable. So yeah, best killer in the game by far, no contest. Moving on. All right, Spirit, and this is part of why Spirit is not as good as Nurse. So the biggest thing is Spirit doesn't have as good of map control as you might think. So Spirit is a 110 killer, and you can use her power to get from point A to point B. The problem with doing that though is the longer you use Spirit's power, the longer the recharge takes before you can use it again. So if you use your entire power to get from point A to point B, which you can do, and sometimes that is the correct play, you then don't have your power until it recharges. Sorry, I gotta take a sip there. Yeah, so you're sitting there with your thumb up your ass while you're waiting for your power to recharge, and you're just chasing normally as a 110 killer. So map control, it's definitely above average. So it's like more than like, more than like, say, like, a killer with no map control. So it'd be like, I don't know, if I just describe an arbitrary number out of 10, she probably has like 7 out of 10 map control. So it's like decent, I guess. Like it's fine, but it's not as high as killers with good map control, and it's deceptive because if you use it, it actually impacts how well you can chase, at least for a while. All right, chase power. Now this is part of where Spirit shines. Other than Nurse, she is the best chaser in the game. She goes invisible. You don't know where she is. You don't even know if she's phasing because there's not really any audio cue. Yes, on her shards of glass that stick out of her shoulders, they do glow very slightly, and if you're in melee with her already, you can see them, but like, the only time this is ever applicable in an actual game situation is if you pallet stun her and then sit directly on the other side of the pallet, and then she doesn't break it trying to mind game you, and then she like phases then. That's like the only time you can actually see this, because it doesn't render if you're farther than that away. So, but nonetheless, very strong killer, really good chase potential. Now, there are some people saying, oh, you can counter Spirit by, doing X, Y, and Z. So here's the thing. If you just take Spirit, right, and you're at a loop with her, and you go into your power, and you don't try to use it to get all the way around the loop, you just use it for, like, a second or two to, like, get halfway around, even if the Survivor mind games you, you can just do it again in 2 seconds. So every 2 to 3 seconds, you're giving the Survivor a 50-50. Eventually they're going to lose that coin flip, and even if you have to roll it 4 times, you're really only losing, like, at most, like, 15 seconds. So it's basically just doomed. She probably has the second best chase potential out of anyone in the game. It's like a 9 out of 10. Incredibly good. Snowball potential, again, pretty much the same thing as Nurse. She doesn't have a one-shot, and it's technically slightly weaker, but her snowball potential is very, very, very strong. She can down survivors incredibly quickly, especially if there's not like a strong window or a strong pallet. You can just phase and just hit them because there's nothing for them to really do. It's hard to juke. Iron Will does help, but if she has Strider, it's basically just doomed. Yeah, her snowball potential very, very strong. I'm not going to go too much into it because she functions very similar to the Nurse. Game breaking. As you can probably tell by the way I'm talking about it, she does fundamentally break the game. Now, there are other there's an other invisible killer, which is the Wraith, but the problem is Spirit has true invisibility and can attack instantly out of it. The survivors have no real way to know where she is, and the standstill mind game, air quotes, is really annoying. She does still kind of have to play Dead by Daylight because she can't go through walls, so if you're at, like, a good example is the God Pallet at Larry's, where when you drop it, like, for her to be able to get there, she has to walk all the way back and then through the room and then back down the hallway. Like, you can't even make that with your power unless you have, like, add-ons. And even if you can make it with add-ons and the survivor guesses and vaults, now you have no power and they're on the other side of the pallet that you now have to kick because you can't go into your power again for, like, 12 seconds or however long a recharge is, and you're just fucked. So it's technically worse than Nurse, but not by much. This killer is stupid. They need to do something about it. And plus, another thing is she's way easier to play than Nurse. Like, because at least she's a 110 killer, you can just walk up and hit a survivor. Like, that's allowed. It's not like an illegal move, like with Nurse if you walk up and hit a survivor. So, yeah. Anyway, super, super good. I didn't actually explain. So, before I continue on, I'm going to explain sort of what these tiers are. So, double S is basically, these two are, anyone in this category can actually reliably win versus a coordinated 4-stack. There's not really many killers that can do this, but yes, if you're going up against a good coordinated 4-stack, these killers can actually win. S tier. So these killers can win against a coordinated 4-stack. It is way harder and less likely. You have to play pretty scummy to be able to do it typically, but it can be done. Against anything that's not that, though, they're pretty dominant. You can win pretty easily against just like a group of random survivors, and even a coordinated four stack. If all the survivors aren't very good and you can identify a weak link, you can still generally do pretty well as these killers. A tier. A tier killers will struggle heavily against a coordinated four stack. It's still possible to win, but it is very difficult. Against uncoordinated teams, you'll still probably be fine. You won't have too much trouble. In versus a coordinated four stack, but the survivors aren't too good, you'll still probably be okay. It's a little bit tricky, but it can be done. B tier. The killers in this tier will mostly get shit on by a coordinated four stack. You can win. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you it's impossible to win, but it's pretty hard. Versus uncoordinated teams, you'll probably be okay, although even versus uncoordinated teams, you'll start to see a little bit of trouble with killers at this tier. You can run into problems just finding, like, one good survivor at this point, but you'll still probably be okay as long as the team's uncoordinated. C tier. So these are the killers that, against a coordinated four stack, it's basically just doomed. Like, even if you find a weak link, like, you're just going to be struggling to even get anything done. Versus an uncoordinated team, if they spread out, it's pretty rough. And if you don't identify a weak link pretty quickly, you're going to have a bad time. You can still win versus uncoordinated teams, for sure. Obviously, you can do that on any killer, but it's definitely a lot harder. And you will run into trouble if just, like, everyone on the enemy team, even if they're uncoordinated, if the survivors are just good players, you're really going to be in the struggle here. D tier, you're not going to... Sorry about that. D tier, you're not going to do anything to coordinated teams unless they're, like, trolling. Against uncoordinated survivors, sometimes you can find a weak link and exploit that, and maybe you can get, like, a slug, and I'm not going to say it's impossible. Like, you can definitely win. Like, it's doable for sure. It's really a lot harder, though, and then, like... trying to win with D tier killers is rough. It's not like impossible for sure, but you really want to find uncoordinated survivors, and there needs to at least be one weak link that you need to be able to exploit to really be able to get anything done. There are no F tier killers anymore. Once they reworked Freddy and did the super buff to Hag a while ago, there's no more F tier killers. There's no killer that, like, even an uncoordinated team of shitters can still, like, obliterate. It's, if you're an uncoordinated team and you're just, like, not very good at the game, these two killers will still be a problem for you. All right, give me 1 second. Sorry, a lot of talking. Throat's a little... I'm not used to going this in, we'll say. You know what? I might even get a little bit of menthol to help me out. Give me a minute, let me grab some power real quick. Should I turn off the music for this? I don't know. Hard to say. We'll leave it on for now. If I find this distracting, I might turn it off later. Alright, so next we have Hag. So Hag is a very, very good killer. If you watched the big tournament that was on, like the only real good tournament that's been in this game, Hag was definitely played. She's a very good killer. Yeah, she's the pretty much top of S tier, and let's get into why. So map control. Hag does have a bit of a slow early game, but she can set up traps at pretty good places, and she can have a lot of them out. She can have, I think, 10 of them out at any given time. She places them very, very quickly. They're almost impossible to see unless it's on, like, bare ground or if you're in, like, an indoor map, because they do show up as, like, a dirt mark on the floor, so you can see the triangle on the floor in an indoor map. And because of this, she can basically get around the map, not necessarily for free, but with very little effort. If you hook someone, she can put traps under their feet, run across the map to go pressure somewhere else. Someone goes for the unhook. Suddenly she's triple pressuring because the people have to be crouching at the hook. She can just walk back. A lot of people don't take into account how slow you go when you're crouching on Survivor and how quickly a Hag can get back to the hook if, obviously, she knows you're going to be unhooking. So her map control is actually pretty decent. It's not as good as like again a nurse or like a hillbilly, but it's at least decent. She's got like like 7, 8 out of 10 map control, right? Probably slightly better than Spirit. Chase power is really, really good. Basically, all you have to do is just put down a trap in the loop, and then the survivors run to it, and then you don't... Okay, so the only thing you gotta be careful of is you don't want to instantly take the trap as soon as the survivors trigger it. You want to make sure that you keep chasing them until they actually walk into it, and then you teleport and go. Unless, like, you have to actually do it, because what a lot of survivors will do is they'll hit it and then run back into you, and then you won't be able to actually hit them. But other than that, her chase power is very, very strong. It can get messed with a little bit if the survivors have flashlights, but I mean, if survivors are bringing flashlights, you're kind of chilling anyway. Yeah, she can end chases very, very effectively. Even very strong loops, if she has a trap in the loop. And the thing is, you have no way of knowing if one's there, so you just have to go to the loop and then hope that it's not, and then call it a day. Yeah, so her chase power is very, very good. Snowball potential. Okay, so Hag, in just normal chase situations, doesn't have crazy snowball potential, but what she can do is she can trap the shit out of someone on the hook. Because of this, she can use proxy hook camping to get ridiculous snowball potential. I'm sure everyone's played against it, where there's a Hag, she finally downs someone, she hooks them, and then puts down 5 traps next to the hook. And then she like fucks off, defends some generators, and then when you finally go to get the unhook, you unhook them, and she just runs right back to the hook. Now your options are either you get hit while crouching, or run and trigger the traps and get hit anyway. And then she has someone on the ground, chasing someone. It can get real snowbally real quick. It's pretty spicy. So Hag, really good snowball potential. Not as good as like a nurse or a spirit, but very, very good. Like 8 out of 10 snowball potential. Very, very strong. Game breaking. Hag is actually fairly game breaking. Being able to teleport across the map instantly. Because here's the thing, there's no wind up to her teleport. Like, if you trigger a trap, she just does it, and then she's there. It's like a 1/10 of a second delay as you like have to rise out of the ground. It's very quick, and you can attack instantly. Like this lets you just cut off loops. And when I say cut off, I don't mean like cut off in like the, oh, it makes it hard to. I mean like if you take the loop, you're getting hit cut off. Like it's very, 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 very strong. Hag is an incredible killer. Ever since they buffed her, and honestly, I'm glad she's probably one of the least played because she's my least favorite to go against. It's very, very boring, like walking into a loop and being like, well, I hope there's not a trap here, and then if there is, I'll just lose, and then if there's not, I run through it. She just puts a loop down by where the pallet is and calls it a day, or on the other side of the loop. So yeah, Hag, very, 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 very good. Definitely top of regular S tier. Okay, now here's where things start to get a little bit muddled, where it gets a little tricky because, like, these 4 killers are all sort of very close here. So this is a bit more opinion-y. So these 3 are not... I mean, like, obviously these are all opinions and it's all subjective, but, like, these 3 are pretty solidified as, like, the top 3. Most people you talk to will agree that it's these 3 in this order. This next part's where it gets a little fuzzy. So, Hillbilly, I still think he's very, very strong. They did nerf Hillbilly a while back. They nerfed a bunch of his add-ons. And then they also randomly added the overheat mechanic, which, as long as you're a good Hillbilly, you're never overheating. It's just not happening. But they did nerf a bunch of his add-ons, which was needed. He's still a very, very good killer. He has probably the best map control in the game, because you can, for free, just sprint across the map very, very quickly. This is obviously limited slightly in indoor maps, but even in indoor maps, most of them have pretty decent straightaways to get from point A to point B. Except for, like, Midwich. Hell, even the game on the top floor, you can get from one side of the map to the other. Larry's, you have the side hallways, like, you can get from A to B. Basically on all but, like, one map in the entire game on Hillbilly. Very, very good. So, Hillbilly actually probably has 10 out of 10 map control. It's just the best in the game. It's the only thing that's probably slightly better than Nurse. Again, just because you're not limited in, like, oh, I have blink fatigue I don't want to double blink because if I see a survivor, then I have to wait. Hillbilly, best map control in the game, 10 out of 10. Okay, chase power. So here's where Hillbilly sort of falters a little bit. If a Hillbilly catches you in the open, yes, he can just one-shot you. But at normal loops, it's not that strong. At like longer loops, he can sort of chainsaw around corners, and even shorter loops, he can do it to a lesser extent. It's not easy. And survivors can just drop the pallet. Now, he can chainsaw through the pallet if he's already revving, but he has a pretty long rev as well, and he can't turn that much when he's chainsawing. You can do the little billy flick, which is very important to being a good billy. But again, it's not like wild. Like if you're at a tight loop or a round loop or like a rock loop or something, he's basically just a normal killer. So he's like 7 out of 10 chase. Like it's definitely above average. Like the chainsaw does help, again, getting through pallets, finding survivors in dead zones, or if you run like Spirit Fury Enduring, you get your you break a pallet with Spirit Fury Enduring. That's only the survivors caught with like nothing. You can get the chainsaw down. It's pretty strong, but it's not like wild. Snowball potential. So this is going to be high for most of the killers with a one-shot. Yes, if you down someone and then see another survivor near you, you have a one-shot. Like, you can defend hooks very well. You can down multiple survivors. Like, if you come up on multiple survivors doing a generator, chainsaw one, and then start chasing the other, you've already started snowballing. So he's got, like... And because you can also get from point A to point V very quickly, you can slug a survivor, chainsaw away a little bit, and then down another survivor very quickly. So he's like probably like 8 out of 10 snowball potential. It's slightly worse than like yeah, it's probably 8 because you still have to deal with like chases. Like you're not immune to chases, so but he does have very, very strong snowball potential. Most of the killers with one shots are going to be pretty decent. Game breaking mechanics. Hillbilly doesn't really break the game at all. He still has to play Dead by Daylight. The closest thing he can get to breaking the game is chainsawing through pallets, but even then, like, I mean, it's not... It's fine. Hillbilly doesn't break the game. He still has to play a fair game of Dead by Daylight. Okay. Next is Blight. So Blight and Hillbilly are very similar. Blight is basically fast Hillbilly, but without a one-shot. So map control, Blight, pretty much 10 out of 10. You can get pretty much anywhere in any map almost instantly. Even more so than Hillbilly, because even in indoor maps like Midwich, you can just use your power to go around corners. 10 out of 10, Blight, again, some of the best map control in the game. He does have a bit of a cooldown, but like it's pretty short, let's be real here. Chase power. So Blight actually has really good chase power. He is a 115 killer, so he's not like any of these three where he's slow outside of his power. And then you can use his power at a surprisingly high amount of loops. Like, even without the bullshit exploit of like J-flicking, you can just like use your power at like long walls, short walls. You can use it at wall T walls. You can use it at shack. You can use it at any named loop, really. And then that's not even counting like if you're chasing a survivor and you break a pallet and then you use your power to catch up and just hit them. Like, his power is shockingly good, and because you can use it, you can change directions by bumping into something. It's hard for survivors to really juke you. The only thing they can really juke you at is very short round loops. You can't really use your power at those, but those loops suck anyway, so you just chase them normally and then just hit them. Like, it can't be understated of how good it is to just, like, slap someone and then, like, with, like, your M1 and then just use your power to instantly catch back up. It feels real good. Snowball potential, again, because of how strong he is in the chase, he just has good snowball potential. And combine that with his map control, he can down people very quickly and then immediately move on to someone else. So, again, the only thing holding back his snowball is not having a one-shot. So he's like 7 out of 10 to snowball potential. Very, 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 very good. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game. He still has to play normal Dead by Daylight. Still does loops. Still gets hit by pallets. Still has to deal with windows. Can't go through walls. Nothing crazy like that. So, He is, he's probably, Blight is, in my opinion, probably, like, the most fair and balanced killer. That, like, I know Behavior's never going to watch this, but Behavior, Blight, this is where I want my killer power to be. Right? Is like Blight level. He's a very, very, very good killer that still has to obey the rules of the game, and it is fun to play against and is fun to play as. That's another thing. Like, most people don't hate playing against Blight. Like, it's fun to watch this motherfucker slam his face into shit, and when he misses, it's amazing. Or, like, when he gets turned around, like, oh, where the fuck they go? Like, he goes flying past you. Like, this killer, fantastic. Thumbs up, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. And it's fun to play as, too. It's very fast-paced. I know I don't play him tons, but that's because I'm, like, sleepy half the time. But very, very, very good. Would recommend. Okay. One second, let me take a sip of some water. Alright, next. Oni. Okay, so Oni, the only reason I don't have Oni in S tier is because Oni has one of the weakest early games in the entire game. Right? He's a 115 killer with a normal size tear radius, and his power initially is he sucks up blood. Like, he doesn't do anything early. So if you're playing against a good team as Oni, he can't... if you just drop pallets safely before he gets his first hit, you can reasonably do, like, 3 full generators before he gets his power. Like, it is rough. And then, on top of that, he doesn't have any inherent tracking, so he struggles to find people. But when he gets his power, holy shit, is it one of the most intimidating powers in the game. It's like Hillbilly Chainsaw on crack. Like, he can curve, he doesn't stop when he impacts walls, he can hit multiple people at the same time with his swing like Leatherface. This is a scary fucking power. So, let's talk about him. Map control. So, at the start of the game, Oni has no map control. He just has to walk his happy ass from point A to point B. That being said, when he has his power, it's like a slightly slower Hillbilly Chainsaw. So he's got, like, if you combine no map control with I can sprint across the map, he's very hot and cold, very dynamic. So he's overall, if I had to, like, just mash it together, he's probably got, like, 7-ish out of 10 map control, but that's, like, out of his power, it's, like, you know, generic 3, and then in his power, it's, like, a 10, right? Chase power, again, when he isn't in his demon mode, he's just a regular killer with no power. In demon mode, though, he can obliterate pallets, he runs very fast, and that lunge with the big hammer, you can lunge, like, it's wild how far you can lunge. It's like the entire length of the short side of shack wall. Like, you go obnoxiously far, and you can turn while you're doing it. And that's not even counting the dash power. Like, when he's in demon mode, his chase power is incredibly high. But again, you have that dichotomy of when he's not, it's just rough. Okay, snowball potential. So this is really where Oni shines. Oni has, in my opinion, the best snowball potential in the entire game. Even more than Nurse. If you're running Infectious Fright, which you should be, let's be real, you can down someone, down anyone else in your tear radius because you just heard them, and then because multiple people are now injured, they're leaving blood everywhere. So you can get your power back very, very quickly. Once you get rolling on Oni, it feels like there's no stopping you. It's like a train, right? Sure, the survivors can hit the brakes if they can all heal up and then all hide from your power. Like, it can be done, but again, it's hard to get that train rolling, but once it gets going, it's fucking tough to stop. Yeah, very, very strong. Probably the best snowball potential in the game. Game breaking, Oni doesn't break the game. He still has to chase you normally. He doesn't have any way to deal with loops besides just brute forcing through them. Now he can brute force loops through. He can't. He can brute force through loops very, very well, but he still has to brute force through them. Windows are pretty good versus Oni, especially even in his power, because he still has to vault them or go around them. So yeah, doesn't break the game at all. But again, very, very strong killer. Very well designed too. It can feel pretty rough if like the survivors hide versus you, especially in the early game, because you really don't do anything until you get your first hit. Like it's a weak early game, but the payoff, the payoff is so good. All right, moving on. Also, LCN, I appreciate you stop by saying that. I'm trying to do some analytical shit, so we'll see how this goes. And also, I want to highlight this just like as like a Twitch highlight, so that I can, have something to point to, and people say, "Oh, what do you think of this killer?" I'll just throw a point into this list. Okay, Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head is very, very good. He is. I'm not a huge fan of him. He's sort of bullshit a little bit, kind of like Hag, but I guess less so than Hag. That's why he's down here. Very, very good killer. Has a lot of options. We'll sort of get into it here. So Pyramid Head has almost no map control. I don't want to say he has none, because he does have like scuffed tracking with his trails. Like you can crouch through the trail, but like most people don't really do that. So it does at least sort of tell you where survivors are, sometimes kinda. It's not good, but it's better than nothing, kind of. Chase power. Okay, now this is where Pyramid Head really gets his mark, and this is why he's an A tier. Pyramid Head, with his power, can basically zone you, so he can put his sword in the ground and then just lift it back up to sort of... Now, they did nerf this, so it's not as good, but he can sort of zone you for free. He puts down his sword, and then you have to start juking, because if you don't, he's just going to hit you with his power. But if you start juking, and you're not continuing to gain distance, he can just take his sword out of the ground and just hit you, right? Because he's a normal move speed killer, he doesn't lose all that much for faking it. And if you're at a pallet loop or a window, and you go to take the window, he can just hit you through it most of the time. So you have to basically mind game him every time you want to even use a window or a pallet. So even using resources versus a Pyramid Head is hard. Like, not to say it can't be done, but versus a good Pyramid Head, it's almost every time you vault something, you're getting hit. Now, you can do certain things with loops that have line of sight blockers. So, like, at Shack or at, like, a short rock loop, you can fake a pallet drop and, like, vacuum back to stun him. It can be done. It is very, very hard to do so, and he can down you very, very quickly. Snowball potential. Okay, so this is actually one of the things where the rest of his power is going to come into play. So obviously he can down relatively quickly. Technically his power is a multi-hit, which you can do a bit of cheesiness versus Survivor unhooks, but realistically you're not going to be multi-hitting with it almost ever. Again, except for those Survivor unhook moments. But because you can down people relatively quickly, and also his slug game is pretty good. If you have multiple survivors in the same area, and you're like at your 3-gen, and you don't want to take the time to hook the survivor, you can just put them in a cage very quickly. It's literally like a 1-second thing. You just stab them on the ground, it teleports them away to somewhere else. Now, you do lose hook pressure because they're not hooked at your 3-gen, but you can just do that and continue on with your chase instead of leaving them slugged. So you get basically a free hook while you continue doing whatever it is you're doing. It's very, very nice. As well as his built-in Mori, if you're on Death Hook, it's very fast. It's literally just like swing, slide, and that's the entire Mori. Like it's like a 2-second Mori. So it's actually pretty decent for just like killing someone when there's a group of people around and then continuing on with your game. So very, very good. He has pretty decent snowball potential. Again, it's not as good as like if he'd have a one-shot or like, you know, something like a nurse or something, but it's pretty decent. It's like 8 out of 10. It's pretty strong. All right, game breaking. So Pyramid Head actually does slightly break the game. His power, the projectile at least that he has, isn't a real projectile. It's a shockwave. It goes through pallets, it goes through walls, it goes through generator, it goes through everything. It can multi-hit. It's a very, very, very good power. And because of that, it is slightly game breaking. Not to the degree of like a hag, but it does definitely help really elevate him above some of the other killers. That he inherently is just slightly bullshit, if that makes any sense. Being slightly bullshit puts you higher up in the tiers for sure. Okay, Huntress, everybody's favorite projectile killer. Huntress is a very strong killer. She's definitely been made weaker the more they've changed the maps, and she is probably one of the most map-dependent killers on the game. There's certain maps where she excels in, and other maps where she's just, I mean, trash. Let's be real here. But she is, for all intents and purposes, the projectile killer. I mean, realistically, there are others, but she's really the one. So let's sort of go through. Map control. So she actually has not terrible map control. Again, it does depend on what map she's on. But on like an open map, you can throw hatchets and pressure people on other sides of the map. And it's not like, you know, like something that doesn't do anything. If you hit a survivor, they're just injured or downed. Right? It's pretty decent. It can't always be done. A lot of maps there's like a bunch of stuff in the way, or if a survivor knows you're throwing it, if you're throwing it cross map, even at full charge, they can reaction dodge it just because of travel time. So it's not super reliable, but it's not nothing. And this is important. It's not nothing, which as we keep going down the list, more and more killers are just going to have nothing. Chase power. Huntress actually has pretty good chase power. Anytime she has straight line of sight, she can hit you, which is incredibly dangerous. She does struggle at sort of shorter loops because when she readies a hatchet, it slows her down tremendously, and she can't throw instantly. There is a delay. But anytime she has line of sight for more than a full second, she can hit you. And because of the hitbox of hatchets, so, okay, something that needs to be explained here. The hatchet hitbox for survivors is basically a basketball. The hatchet hitbox for for objects like walls and stuff is a vertical book, which means that she can throw a hatchet very close to a wall, and you can be on the other side of that wall, but if you're close to the corner, the edge of the basketball will still hit you, even though the book hitbox for the hatchet collision didn't hit the wall. So it can look like you got hit behind the wall because you did, which is very misleading. A lot of people don't know that that's a thing, but it's very, very important when considering how a Huntress is throwing her hatchets. Anyway, yeah, anytime you get locked into an animation, a pallet drop, a window vault, she can pretty much hit you. She's very, very strong in chases. Again, her only downside is she's a 110 killer, and at short round loops, or tall loops, she can struggle a little bit. Snowball potential. Huntress actually has pretty good snowball potential. She has one of the best basement games, or one of the best basement pressure situations in the entire game. With 5 hatchets, you have to understand that's 5 hits, and if you're already injured, she can down people very, very quickly. She has incredible snowball potential. Again, because the hatchets just damage you regardless of the range, she can down someone far away and continue a chase with someone else, or down someone close to her and then swap to chasing someone else. It's very, very good. Again, it's not as good as like a nurse, but it's very, very strong. Game breaking. Now, Huntress, unlike something like a Hillbilly or Oni, she can actually throw over obstacles. So anytime there's a short loop, you've got like some crates or something and a pallet. This is common on like Macmillan or Autohaven maps. She can just throw over those, which is mildly game breaking. Now the hatchets do have wall collision, so if you're like inside of a building, she's not going to hit you, but she can still throw through windows, over loops, stuff like that. So it is probably the most mild game breaking ability that exists, but it still is kind of game breaking. So that does definitely help elevate her above like a couple other killers that we're about to mention. Okay, Demogorgon. Demogorgon actually just got an add-on buff, and this is probably the killer. Once we get lower, I'm going to start talking about add-ons more. But this is a killer that they just gave effectively a built-in save the best for last and a built-in brutal strength to his power. It's really, really good. I don't know why they did this. So the two add-ons in question are Barb's Glasses, which is yellow add-on, and the Black Heart, which is a brown add-on. So these are yellow and brown add-ons that he can have. The yellow add-on, I might be reversing these, but you're always going to run them anyway. So the yellow add-on reduces the delay after you successfully use your lunge attack, your power, and hit a survivor. The Black Heart reduces the delay after you break a pallet with your power. So basically, you can now just use your power non-stop and with no downside. They also buffed his base movement speed, so you don't need Rat Liver anymore. It's basically a useless add-on now. Don't use it. It's a trap. Anyone that tells you that it's good is still stuck in pre 4.7.2. It's Demogorgon is incredibly good. He kind of functions similarly to Huntress, where if he has line of sight of you and there's not like stuff in the way, he can just hit you with his power from pretty far away. And because of how quickly he can shred through pallets, even dropping pallets versus him is pretty rough because he breaks pallets in like 1.8 seconds. Like, you gain no distance in 1.8 seconds, and he can just ready the power and hit you again. It's so fast. And when he hits you with his power with Barb's Glasses, it's like he has 4 stacks of Save the Best for last. It's incredible. Like, the buffs to this killer are insane. Okay, so let's sort of go through the actual criteria. So map control. He doesn't have as good of map control as most people think. He can put down portals, for sure. And getting a 3-gen going by just putting the portals directly on the generators is very strong. But he can't, like, set a portal in the middle of a chase. Like, if he's just chasing people, he doesn't have time to set up portals. But, again, he can still set up portals. So his map control is at least good. It's like 7 out of 10. It's probably as good as, like, Spirit, right? He has strong map control, but it's not like his main thing. Like, it's good, but not like crazy. Chase power, again, his chase power is very good after the buffs. He's still, again, very strong windows he can struggle against. That's basically his only real weakness. And short loops, like short round loops. You can't really line up your power at a round loop. Like, you need a straight line of sight. But other than that, like, with the changes, you can just obliterate pallets. You can obliterate loops. You can hit survivors when they're in the open. He's very, 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 very good. Snowball potential. His snowball potential is decent. Again, his power definitely helps for sure. He doesn't have a one-shot, though, and if there's multiple survivors around, as long as you just separate, it's not too bad. He can force it a little bit by, like, staying near the hook or slugging. He can do it, but he doesn't have great snowball potential. It's just okay. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game at all. He basically plays Dead by Daylight relatively fair. He can brute force through pallets, sort of like Oni, with not quite as strong, but fairly effectively. But yeah, that's not really game breaking, so he still has to play fair Dead by Daylight. Okay, next is Leatherface. So this is the first probably contentious pick that I'm going to have here. Actually, Demogorgon might be contentious, but Leatherface is... I feel like Leatherface is very strong, and I'm going to tell you why. So, Leatherface, ever since they reworked him, he can just obliterate loops. Like, it's so rough. You just have to donate pallets to this man. Like, he's basically unstoppable if he just revs his chainsaw at a loop. The only thing that stops him is strong windows. So, anyway, let's sort of go through. So, map control, he doesn't have any map control. He walks his happy ass from point A to point B. This is the first killer that has no map control on this list, and you're going to see more of that as we continue, but he has nothing. Chase power, he's actually a monster in chases. Any time a survivor is looping a pallet that doesn't have a window, as soon as you enter the loop, you can just rev your chainsaw And if you have just like regular yellow add-ons, like regular chili and like primer bulb, you can get around the loop, and if the survivor does not drop the pallet, you will hit them. And if they do drop the pallet, now you've chainsawed through a pallet, your stun is like a second, if that, and now you're on their ass with a one-shot potential. Like, if there's not another loop right there or a strong window, they're fucked. Snowball potential. So, Leatherface does have decent snowball potential. He does have a one-shot, a multi-hit one-shot, so you can't really hook rescue in front of a Leatherface. He'll just kill you. He can't get from A to B, and he does struggle with windows, so it's not the best, but it's still pretty good. He can snowball a game. If survivors are next to each other, he can snowball very, very quickly. So it's decent. It's like, again, like a 7 out of 10 snowball potential. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game. Leatherface plays just normal Dead by Daylight. His big thing is he brute forces through pallets. Probably as good as Oni in his power. Like, Leatherface can just brute force through almost anything in the game except for strong windows. Very, very, very strong. I have him at pretty, like, the bottom of A tier. I was debating between having him in A and B, but he's just decent. And of pure spite, I put him above Freddy. Freddy. So they did just nerf him. They removed all the slowdown add-ons from Freddy. He's still good. He's basically just the good version of Clown. His power is the same as Clown, but he can also teleport across the map. I don't have much to say. It's Freddy. Map control, very, very good. Can teleport to generators. Run with barbecue and chili, which, I mean, most people run barbecue just because blood points are nice, but on Freddy it's really nice because you hook someone, you see someone on a gen, you teleport to them. Congratulations. You're map controlling. You're doing it. Fucking Freddy. Chase power. So, chase power, it's pretty decent. He can... I'm assuming you're having blood puddles. I'm assuming you're not trolling and, like, taking the stupid pallets. But assuming you have blood puddles, every time you're at a loop, you just put down a puddle at the opposite side of the loop from where the pallet is. And the survivors now have to drop the pallet or you hit them. That's the killer. It's very boring. It's a lot like Clown. He's just really annoying to play against. His chase power is decent. Now, the survivors can drop the pallets early, and it can seem like they're looping you for a long time, but the problem is when a survivor loops a Freddy for a long time, they're usually burning a lot of resources to do so, and then when he does eventually down them, now there's like nothing left on the map. So his chase power is pretty good. He doesn't really struggle versus windows, like I said, just because he can, like, it's a rough slow. Like, it's a 15% slow. So it definitely is noticeable, and he can put down multiples in a chain, so you just keep triggering them. It's pretty good. Snowball potential. His snowball potential is okay, assuming you have some sort of game delay, like Pop Goes the Weasel. Like, you can hook a survivor, teleport to a gen, pressure them off, pop, get it down relatively quickly because there's no resources left on the map, especially if you have blood puddles set up already or you just set them up in the loops. He can snowball a little bit. Again, he doesn't have a one-shot, and he doesn't have like any massive move speed buff to catch back up to survivors like a lot of these guys up here or even down here. But it's still decent enough just because of how good his chase power is and because he can teleport across the map. Game breaking, he doesn't really break the game. I mean, being able to teleport across the map is almost game breaking, I guess, but other than that, he still has to play Dead by Daylight. Like, he still chases you. He still has to break pallets, deal with windows. Like, he mostly plays fair Dead by Daylight, but okay, Freddy is the most annoying killer that plays fair Dead by Daylight. Like, he's the most straightforward and bullshit piece of shit in this game that still plays the game, if that makes any sense. Fuck this killer. He's really annoying, really boring. Okay, so now I get to B tier. These killers, this is where we start to see like killers that actually have like downsides. So we'll start with, and this is also sort of where it starts to get a bit fuzzier for me, because like you can make an argument for any of these killers moving above each other, etc. Alright, so the twins, so admittedly the twins are probably the killer I know the least about. I hate the twins. I hate playing against them, don't like playing as them. Fortunately, you don't see them too much. They're pretty decent. Their big gimmick is you can split up and have Victor on one side of the map and your main body on the other, and you're like double pressuring shit, and that's their big shtick. So let's sort of go over. I guess I'll talk a little bit about the power. So Victor, when he's detached, moves very, 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 very quickly. He has no tear radius. You can hear him making his like little grunts, I guess, when he's close to you. When Charlotte is not controlling, or when you're controlling Charlotte and Victor's detached, anytime a survivor is within grunt range of Victor, they pop up on Killer Instinct unless they're crouching. They can kick Victor if he's not being controlled, or after he whiffs a lunge, or even if he hits a lunge and he downs a survivor, he can still be kicked. Alright, so map control. They have actually pretty decent map control, again, because you can be in two places at once. That's obviously very, very good. Now, you still do run into the problem of that Charlotte's the only one that can actually hook people, so if Victor is on one side of the map and he downs someone but then gets kicked, a lot of the times that survivor can still be picked up before Charlotte can actually get there. But ideally, you're not going to do that. Her proxy slug ability is very, very good, where you can have Victor just pressuring someone, say he downs someone. Charlotte can then walk back over, and if another survivor shows up, you can start chasing them or swap back to Victor. But we'll get into more of that with Snowball Potential. Chase power. So chase power is a little funky to talk about with this killer. So if you are healthy, her chase power is actually not that good, because Victor can hit you and attach to you, but he can't actually down you if you're healthy. And Charlotte by herself has no power. So if you're healthy and Victor attaches to you, Charlotte still needs to come up and actually slap you to down you, and at that point she's just a 115 killer with no ability. And that's it. If you're injured, Victor can actually down you, and because Victor is so easy to hit with, then his chase is actually pretty good. He can fly over windows, he can fly over pallets. It's hard, but it can be done. Now if you whiff, he can be kicked, and then you lose all your pressure instantly, so it's very punishing to mess up. But if you're injured, their chase power is pretty decent. Again, versus this killer, try to be healthy as much as possible. This is one of the few situations where you just want to heal whenever you can. Very, very important. Snowball Potential. Yes, yes, yes. Snowball Potential. So, the twins have really annoying Snowball Potential. Unfortunately, they have this gameplay mechanic where one of the most effective ways to play versus them is they can proxy slug. If you get downed by Victor, what will often happen is Charlotte will swap bodies and leave Victor on top of your slug, so that if any survivor comes near you to heal you, she will know. And then she'll just swap back to Victor and then attach to them or down them too. All while her main body is on the other side of the map doing something else. So she can literally be pressuring 3 survivors at once, basically for free. This is incredibly strong, and this is probably her best attribute. This is why she's at the top of B tier, is because this gameplay style is very difficult to deal with, and there's not really that much you can do about it. It's really, really annoying. So yeah, Charlotte, very good Snowball Potential. Not like as crazy as like Oni's or something, but very, very good compared to most of the other killers in this tier. So what you'll find, most of the killers in this tier do like one thing really well, and that's about it. Game breaking, she doesn't really break the game. Being in 2 places at once is pretty strong, but like her power doesn't Victor can still be pallet stunned. Like he can still slam into walls. Like he can hit through windows, but like I guess it breaks the game like a tiny bit, like a teeny tiny bit. It's like she breaks the game as much as like Huntress breaks the game. They don't really break the game. So anyway, relatively straightforward killer. Just really good Snowball Potential and a really annoying proxy slug thing that you can do. Death Slinger. everybody's favorite gun boy. Alright, Deathslinger, his big gimmick is he shoots you. The annoying thing about Deathslinger is he can ready his power instantly, so unlike Huntress, there's no windup to his power. It just happens. Because of that, there's not really any counterplay to it. He just kind of does it. The downside is he still has to actually melee you to down you. So if you're like on the other side of a wall or a pallet, he can't actually down you unless he can pull you close enough to melee. So we'll sort of get into Deathslinger a bit here. Actually, give me 1 second. I'm going to take a quick break just so I can stop talking for a second and get some water. Because I've been talking for a bit. So I will BRB real quick before I get into Deathslinger stuff. Okay, so Deathslinger, we talked a little bit about his power. We're going to sort of get into his map control. So Deathslinger has basically no map control, and he's also a 110 killer, so he moves even slower than normal. He does technically have a range. His shot does go 18 meters, but that's it. Like, he can't. If you're more than 18 meters away from him, he can't do anything to you. Now, he does have a smaller tear radius, and most of them will run Monitor and Abuse, so the tear radius is even smaller. So he can sneak up on you without you realizing it. But realistically, his map control is pretty shit. Yeah, it's pretty shit. Chase power. Now this is where Deathslinger shines. In a 1v1 chase situation, it's very difficult to do anything to Deathslinger. He can shoot instantly. There's no windup to his shot. You can literally left click to aim down sight and right click, you can right click to aim down sight and left click instantly. There's no windup, no charge, no nothing. Now it does slow him down, but because you can right click, left click, you're effectively just hip firing. There's not really anything that the survivors can do in a 1v1 chase. Now, the only downside to this is because he can injure you by breaking the chain, he can't actually down you by doing that, though. He still has to melee you. So if you're at a pallet, you can just drop the pallet, and he has to it has to be a short enough loop that he can pull you around the loop, or he has to break the pallet and then try to hit you afterwards, which gives you a chance to gain some distance. This doesn't work for very long, realistically, because you're not going to be able to keep chaining together pallets that close together. So in a 1v1 chase, he's, again, very, very strong. He's almost unbeatable in a 1v1 situation. But that's pretty much all he has. Snowball potential, he doesn't. He can't really snowball at all. Because you have to use your grapple to actually hit people, realistically, since you're a 110 killer. When you grapple someone, you have to slowly reel them in, so any survivors near you can just run. Now, yes, you can, down someone, and then if there's another injured survivor, you can, try to hit them, but, it's not the easiest. His snowball potential is not, weaker than average, because you do sort of have a range, but it's, instead of being, a 3 out of 10, it's, a 4 out of 10, right? It's not nothing, but it's bad. Ooh, that feels good. Alright, game breaking. He breaks the game the same way Huntress does. He can shoot over shit. He can shoot through little tiny holes in the wall, too, because the projectile is, the size of a pen. So if a pen can fit through it, so can the projectile. But yeah, he doesn't really break the game. Again, him and Huntress break the game pretty much the same. Alright, Plague. Ah, yes, Plague. Plague. Plague is a pretty decent killer. She will leave you... Most of the games that you play against a Plague, most people just don't cleanse. So basically everyone's just playing the game injured the entire game. Now, if you do cleanse, she gets access to her power, and she does have one of these in the game, so she can do this once per game anyway. Her power is very strong. It is the strongest ranged attack. It's short range for sure, but it can go over stuff, and you can just spray it everywhere, so it's like pretty easy to hit as well. So she's pretty decent. She's a good, decent killer. So let's sort of get into it. Map control. She technically you can infect people while AFK. Like you can throw her power onto like objects, like generators, windows, pallets, lockers, stuff like that. And if survivors interact with them, they'll get sick. So she has a tiny bit of map control, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, she just walks around. She doesn't really have anything that like affects the map when she's not there chasing. So chase power, her chase power is pretty decent. If you're uninjured, well, okay, her chase power is decent if you're not injured, or if she has her corrupt purge instead of just her regular vile purge. So what you will see a lot of plagues do is when they find a survivor at the start of the game, she will charge up her power in melee with you and then try to blast you with the entire stream. And if she does that, it'll injure you, and you don't get the move speed buff when you go from sick to broken, and then she can just hit you, right? So you'll see that a lot. But once you're already sick and injured, she just chases normally, unless she has Corrupt Purge. If she has Corrupt Purge, suddenly she becomes terrifying to loop, because, again, anytime you're not at like a short rock loop, she can just hit you with her power. And she can move while continuing to like spray. So it's actually very, 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 very strong. So this killer has really, really good chase power with Corrupt Purge up. And even if she doesn't have Corrupt Purge up, like, everyone's still injured for the most part. So like she's basically just a 115 killer, but with effectively a one-shot, since no one's ever healthy versus her. Snowball potential. She actually has pretty good snowball potential. Again, if everyone's injured or if she has Corrupt Purge, she can down a lot of people very quickly. It's not like crazy, but it's pretty decent. It's like she's got like pretty good chase power and pretty good snowball potential. She doesn't like excel at anything specifically, but these two are both pretty good. She's got like 7 out of 10 both of these. And then she doesn't really break the game. Corrupt Purge does a tiny bit. You can spray over stuff, but, like, I mean, again, it's sort of like Huntress. It barely counts. Alright, next we'll move on to Miguel, or Myers, everybody's favorite spooky boy. Alright, so Myers, much like Oni, has a weak early game. He moves very slow early game. I think he moves, I don't know if he moves slower than Survivors or if he moves at Survivor speed, but he's very, very slow early game. I believe he moves at 105, so slightly faster, actually. Yeah, I'm going to say he moves at 105, so he moves at 4.15 or 4.05 meters per second. But he has no terror radius, and unlike Oni, where he has to like get a hit, he just has to look at you for 5 seconds, which is not that hard. Especially in the beginning of the game, most people don't know you're a Myers, so as long as you're like not sprinting through the center of the map and you're trying to be at least a little bit sneaky, you can usually look at people. It also doesn't, it's not that hard for him to get to tier 3 either. Again, people like, a lot of people don't take into account how good having like no or a tiny terror radius is. Like, he can just get to you without you even realizing it. So like, you actually want to heal versus Myers, otherwise he can just like hit you for free without you having any warning that he's coming. So, alright, so let's sort of get into it. Map control, he does just have to walk places, and in the beginning of the game he's actually slower than normal, but being a stealth killer, like, he can kind of be anywhere, and he can just get like a free hit out of chase, like randomly, if you're not seeing it coming. Chase power is basically just, he has no chase power realistically. In tier 3 he does vault windows slightly faster, and he does get a slightly longer than normal lunge, so that definitely helps. But outside of tier 3 he's just regular killer with no power. So if you combine those together, he's got like a 5 out of 10 chase. It's pretty meh. Again, a lot of his ability comes from not having a tear radius, just being able to hit people out of chase, and then his tier 3 being a one-shot. So he can snowball very, very well. The biggest problem with him snowballing is that in tier 3 you have a normal size tear radius, so you're no longer a stealth killer in tier 3, so this whole part goes away, and then you just have to chase with your mediocre chasing ability, which is you have a bigger lunge and you vault slightly faster. It helps, but it's not like... It's not game breaking. Like, at most, normally you can only down like 2 people. That's like a good power if you down 2 people with 1 power. Well, a real good... I mean, obviously more is better. Now, I could sit here and talk about his purple add-ons, but again, I was saying that if it's based on purple add-ons, it doesn't count. I will mention it just for the sake of information. So, Myers' best add-on is the Tombstone Piece, which what it does is it increases the amount of stock you need to get from Tier 2 to Tier 3 by, I believe, 7 seconds. So instead of it being 5 seconds, it is it's 12 seconds or so to get from Tier 2 to Tier 3. But that being said, it allows you to just murder a survivor. You don't have to hook them, you don't have to down them, you just walk up in Tier 3 and click on them, and it just kills them. It's really his best add-on, and if we were taking that into account, he'd probably be like the top of B tier. But again, that's not reliable. So we're just saying you have like his stock speed add-ons or something like that for the sake of this video. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game. He's a stealth killer, but like you still also chase normally. You can still see him. Like he plays pretty much fair for the most part. Yeah, Myers is fine. All right, Doctor. Doctor's big thing is that he can stop you from... well, he's also a tracking killer, so he will usually know where you are. And he also can stop you from vaulting or dropping pallets. It's very, very strong. He can also stop you from unhooking. He can interrupt all your actions, pretty much. When you have the shock debuff, the only thing you can do is run. You can't unhook, you can't dead hard, you can't open doors, you can't unhook, you can't do anything when you have the shock debuff. And then when you're in Tier 3 of his Madness power, you can only run, vault, drop pallets, and unhook. You cannot use items, you cannot... actually, you can also open the door, but that's a little bit buggy. You can't heal, you can't do gens, can't do anything. Alright, so Doctor, map control. He actually does have a bit of map control with his big zap. He can see where people are, it interrupts them from what they're doing. And then when you're in Tier 3, you can't progress the game, you can't do generators, so he actually has decent map control even though he has no built-in movement. Yeah, so his map control is decent. His chase power is actually pretty good. He can zap you to prevent you from vaulting or dropping pallets or dead harding. The downside is it slows him down tremendously when he's doing this. So he has to either keep doing it or chase you until he gets relatively close and then at like a perfectly timed distance actually execute the zap. Just to be clear, this is only his right click that stops you from vaulting. His big static blast does not. It'll just kick you off of generators for a second and make you scream, but it doesn't actually stop you from vaulting. It's only his regular right click. So it's actually pretty decent. It's a lot of people underrate this, but like he can, if he wants to just be a piece of shit, he can just chase you around one thing and keep zapping you while gaining a tiny bit of distance until he gets like a guaranteed hit. It can be done, and it's really annoying. But the reason why he's down here, despite the fact that he can do this, is because it takes him a while. It's basically like the shit version of Deathslinger, right? He can guaranteed get you, it just takes a while. Snowball potential, he basically doesn't have any snowball potential. You can get everyone in Tier 3 and stop them from like doing anything for a little bit, but they're just gonna like break out Tier 3. You're not actually like downing a bunch of people altogether. So snowball potential's like, it's not nothing, but it's pretty much nothing. It's like 4 out of 10. Like, it's just above nothing. And then game breaking, he doesn't break the game. I mean, he does a tiny bit because he can prevent you from vaulting or dropping pallets, so I guess, but not really. He basically plays Dead by Daylight as just like a regular killer. Nah, you know what? We're gonna count it. Him stopping you from being able to vault or drop pallets is technically breaking the game. So he's has minor game breaking abilities for sure. So there you go. All right, at the bottom of B tier we have the Stealth Killer, Mr. the Face himself, Mr. Spooky Boy. Yeah. So basically his big thing is his stealth is instant. He doesn't need to go into stealth like, say, like a Wraith. And he truly has no terror radius, whereas Myers, once in Tier 2, does have a terror radius. He is also undetectable, which means that if people have, like, Object of Obsession or a key, like an actual key with, like, Aura Revealing, which not enough survivors do because Aura Revealing keys are pretty good. The Bloodstone add-on for keys is pretty ridiculous, to be honest with you, but not the point. Don't use those. I don't want to see that shit in my game. They're really strong. Super underrated. But anyway, he has true stealth, and he can stalk you and actually expose you, although it's not like Myers. It's per person, which is strong, but it's kind of funky. A lot of his power comes from the fact that, like, the reveal mechanic for him is buggy as shit. Like, you can look at him and it feels like you're looking straight at him and you just don't get any reveal, and he can duck back behind like cover and it resets the duration, but it doesn't reset your stock meter, so he can keep kind of cheesing it, and you can like run into him to force him to hit you, but it's just really awkward and buggy. Okay. So map control, because he's a stealth killer, he does have at least a tiny bit of built-in map control. Like, you don't necessarily know where he is, and he can just, like, hit you from out of chase randomly. He can also stalk you because he's a stealth killer, and go for the one-shot, although it's not reliable. Chase power, when he goes into his power, he doesn't have the red stain, so the red light that appears in front of killers goes away from him, which he actually can use to his advantage. You won't necessarily know if... Normally you have to moonwalk, but with him, you don't have to. You just face the direction you want to, which is a surprising advantage. It's really nice to be able to do that. It's not, like, the best chase advantage, but it's surprisingly helpful versus good survivors. They don't know if you're walking straight or if you're trying to double back. So it is pretty good. Snowball potential, again, he does have the conditional one-shot. Realistically, you're not going to get a ton of these per game. Like, at most, you're probably not getting more than, like, 2 to 3 insta-hit downs. Most of this killer's power comes from the stealth, in that you can just, like, not have a terror radius, right? Like, realistically. Sure, there's going to be some games where you're going to get, you know, oh, I'm constantly getting all these exposes, but it's not realistic. Yeah. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game really at all. I mean, he is stealthy, but, like, he still has to chase normally. He's just a 115... Assuming you see him, he's a 115 killer with no power. He can conditionally one-shot you, but, like, even when you're marked, he's still a 115 killer with no power, assuming you know where he is. So, doesn't break the game at all. Very bottom of D tier, he's probably the best, like, pure stealth killer. I don't count Myers, even though he's a stealth killer, because a lot of his power also comes... His power is split between stealth and having just a one-shot on his basic attack. Whereas this killer, it's kind of the reverse. He has the one-shot, but most of his power is based on stealth. So this is the stealth killer, realistically, in my opinion. Bottom of B tier. Alright, now we start going to killers that aren't very good. These killers are just like meh. There's more downsides to them than upsides, but we'll get into them here in just a second. Alright, Pig. So Pig is the top of the Misfit bundle. She is sort of a stealth killer, but she moves very slowly in her stealth and is crouched, so she can't see very well. Makes tracking difficult. She also has her hats, which is like scuffed game delay, but like it's RNG based, which is always shit. Like, you can get lucky, and if it takes the survivors all 4 tries to get their hat off, she's like an A tier killer, because that's like 2 minutes of game delay, which is, well, 2 minutes of game delay per survivor, so it's like 8 minutes of game delay, which is insane. But more often than not, you know, it's 1 to 2, and then they get it off, and that's that. Alright, so let's talk about her. Map control. She does have scuffed map control with her hats. Like, if she does down you and put a hat on you, you then have to go deal with that, so she's still pressuring you even though she's not actually chasing you. The problem is she has to have downed you first, and because she doesn't have any way to really help with that outside of doing her lunge attack at a short, like, pallet loop, which even that's not super reliable. It can be done, for sure, and good pigs will show you montages of them, you know, moon dashing, which if you don't know, you can moonwalk while doing the dash. You can dash backwards against a wall. But, like, realistically, she doesn't have much that she's doing in a chase. You can sort of cheese this with Save the Best for Last, because using her lunge attack doesn't actually take away Save the Best for Last stacks. So you can cheese it a little bit with that. Sorry, we're on chase power now. But it's not... Alright, I guess we sort of faded in chase power, but it's not that good. So her chase power is basically nothing. Map control, like I said, with the hats, it's decent. It's just you have to actually down a survivor to get the hat on. So it's like 5 out of 10. It's definitely better than nothing, but it's not great. Chase power, like I said, she does have her lunge attack, which is better than nothing, but it's not that great. Okay, snowball potential. So this is actually why she's at the top of C tier. She has, like, the most scuffed snowball potential in the game. Again, if you have good luck and all of those survivors take 3 to 4 tries to get their hats off, you've got, like, between 6 and 8 minutes of game delay, which is just, like, that's super strong. But on the flip side, if the survivors just get their hats off on the first or second try, it's like, oh, now I don't have shit for game delay, and now I don't have any hats anymore, so I'm just, like, a killer with no power and a shit stealth. Like, it's really coin flip. So she's, like, super RNG dependent for her snowball potential, because outside of hat RNG, she has none. Like, actually 0. And her chase power is, like I said, 4 or 5 out of 10 at best, and her map control is also semi-RNG dependent based on the hats. So just, like... she's a mediocre killer that can high roll, right? So that's Pig in a nutshell. She doesn't break the game. None of the rest of the killers break the game except for Trapper. So I'm not even gonna have to really go into that. I guess whatever. We'll talk about each one. So she doesn't break the game at all. Normal killer, top of C tier. All right, K-pop boy, the trickster, the newest addition to Dead by Daylight. Yeah, he's better than he was since they buffed him. He's not very good, though. He is a 110 killer with rapid throw knives. He feels to me a lot like old Legion in that he is guaranteed to down you after a certain amount of time. He suffers really greatly from the fact that he can't pressure multiple people at once, and even though you can down almost anyone, it does take a little while to do so. Alright, so let's talk about him. Map control. He has 0 map control, and he actually has less than nothing because he's a 110 killer, so he's like a 2 out of 10 map control. Now, what you might be saying is, oh, but Corey, he's a ranged killer. He can throw things across the map. So the problem with that is the bleed stacks he puts on you decay if he's not continuing to hit you. So let's say you're on Azerov's and he gets this sick, nasty fucking ocelot montage knife throw across the map. Okay, awesome. It doesn't do anything because he's not there to keep chasing you, so the bleed stack just goes away and you're not injured. Cool. So yeah, he has actually negative map control. So 2 out of 10 map control. Terrible. Chase power. Okay, his chase power is actually decent. Unlike Huntress, he's more akin to Deathslinger in that he can, anytime he has line of sight of you for even a split second, he can hit you with a knife. And he's going to have line of sight of you at some point. And after the buff, where the knife or where the bleed stacks now take 20 seconds to go away instead of 15, it's very hard for him not to be able to hit you with a knife at least once every 20 seconds. So he will down you eventually. And realistically, probably pretty quickly, because he can throw knives anytime you drop a pallet or vault a window, or he has pure line of sight for a second. And he doesn't have like a hit debuff when he injures you, so even though you get the speed buff, he doesn't have like a blade wipe animation unless he melees you. So yeah, his chase is like decent. It's like a 6 out of 10. It's definitely better than nothing. It's pretty good, honestly, but that's all he has. Snowball potential, nothing. He has no snowball potential at all. He cannot pressure 2 survivors at once, because, again, the bleed stacks go away after 20 seconds of him not hitting you with a knife. So if you have 2 survivors, you just have to pick one to chase, because if you leave the survivor you were chasing and go to someone else, well, all that bleed stacks, all that work you did on that survivor is now gone. He does have an ultimate ability where he throws knives very rapidly. I believe it is the main event. It's bad. It is almost always bad to use this power. There is only one situation where it's ever correct to use this power, and that is if you are pressuring a hooked survivor, and there's another survivor going for that unhook. That is the only time you can really snowball, because you can sit there and throw knives at the unhooker until you down them, and then continue using your ult on the other survivor. That's it. Otherwise, his ultimate ability is terrible, because you can't... If a survivor is at any structure, I'm not even talking about a loop, any structure, a rock even, they can just walk in a circle around the rock, and you can't hit them. So yeah, his ult is incredibly bad. That's pretty much it. That's all I have to say. He breaks the game in the same way that all the other range killers break the game. He can hit you over stuff, but that's very minor, and I guess it does help. It's part of why he's higher up on C tier, but that's pretty much it. Not very good. Struggles heavily, carried by the fact that even versus the best survivors, he will down you eventually. Wraith. Ah, yes, generic man. Man with machete, effectively. Or, well, bone, spine, skull, blade thing. So Wraith is the most generic killer in the entire game. Whenever people start playing, I always recommend Wraith to them, because there's nothing to him. He just is invisible, and then he hits you. That's the power. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else to him. So let's talk about it. Okay, map control. So Wraith does gain move speed when he's stealthed, which is pretty nice. He's also, again, invisible, so there's always a little bit of threat. You can hit people outside of a chase if they don't know you're there, which is pretty good. But other than that, he doesn't really have much. He's not, like, super fast. He's, like, pretty quick. You can bring Windstorm add-ons to help with this, but it's not so impactful that it's super important. It definitely helps. He has, like, 5 out of 10 map control, just because he can get from A to B relatively quickly. Chase power. He does have a tiny bit of chase power, because you can go into your power and you can use the move speed to lunge around things and get hits. So what you can do is use stealth at a loop, usually at the pallet, and then you uncloak and you sprint around the loop and you lunge before the speed buff ends so that you can actually hit them. You can also use your stealth move speed to get in front of the survivor to body block a window or a pallet, and then uncloak in front of them and hit them. This is not super reliable and does not always work. The Wraith struggles if the survivor has enough of a lead on you, and the downside of decloaking at the pallet is if the survivor stuns you while you're still cloaked, you actually have a special extended stun duration while your killer uncloaks and goes through the stun. So it is a bit of a risk. His chase power is, again, not 0, but it's not very good. It's like a 4. It's fine, I guess. Snowball potential. Wraith doesn't have any snowball potential, really. As long as you heal, he can't really do anything to you. Like, he's just once you know where he is, he's effectively a killer with no power. Like, he can go invisible and he can try to body block you, but like, if there's any other loops or you know he's doing it, you can try to just turn away. It's pretty rough. It's, again, I'm not going to say it's 0 because if the survivors don't heal, he can sometimes hit someone or like get a free down if they don't know they're there and then chase someone else, but it's like just barely above nothing. It's like a 4, right? It's pretty rough. Game breaking, Wraith just plays the game normally. There's no game breaking here. He's just a normal killer, plays normally. He's fine. Trapper. Ah, yes, Trapper. So, thank God for Trapper that this isn't a no add-on, a no perk, no add-on list, because if it was, he'd be the worst killer in the game. Trapper requires an add-on. You have to bring a bag. In this case, because we're not allowing purple add-ons, you have to bring a yellow bag. Required. You cannot play the killer if you don't. Trapper, for whatever reason, Behavior decided that he has to go and pick up his power around the map to actually set it up and use it. Which means Trapper has an incredibly weak early game, because if you don't take time to set up traps, you don't have a power, which means by the time you have an area set up, the survivors probably have done at least one generator. So you're basically sacrificing one generator every game to have a power. Now, once his power is set, he's the only killer in the game that can down a survivor without interacting with them, which is pretty nice, but it's super conditional, and the survivors do have to run into your traps. So let's sort of start talking about him from on the scale. So map control, he does actually sort of have map control with the way that you can set up areas on the map. You can set up areas to be incredibly dangerous. You can set them up at windows. You can set them up just at loops by generators near hooked survivors, in any sort of choke point. And if you set up a bunch of traps near a 3-gen, it can be very dangerous for the survivors. The downside, though, is, again, they can disarm the traps, and you still have to take the time to set this up. And on top of that, excluding your traps, you're just a 115 normal move speed killer that has to walk around and just hit people. So he probably has like 5 out of 10 map control, again, just because of the traps, but that's about it. Chase power. So again, his chase power is dependent a lot on his traps. If he doesn't have traps in the area that he's chasing in, it's just a normal 3 out of 10, like, basic no power killer, just man with machete. He doesn't do anything. That being said, you can try to herd the survivors into traps, which, obviously, if they step in a trap, that's a free hook. So it's a little sketchy, but it's like, again, like 5 out of 10. It can be done. It's just, you really gotta work for it unless you get lucky and they happen to run into it. So it's fine, it's just a little rough. Snowball potential. So believe it or not, he does actually have sort of snowball potential. I actually had this on a VOD of mine like a month or so ago when I was playing Trapper, and I downed a survivor, and then 2 other survivors instantly just stepped into a trap, so I had 3 people downed at the same time and just won the game on the spot. Like, sometimes that will just happen on Trapper, where, like, 2 survivors will step in a trap at the same time, and it's just, like, you just won the game instantly. This is not normal, and you cannot actively do this, it just happens sometimes. So, he does have snowball potential, but it's, like, scuffed and shit, so it's, like, 5 out of 10. This is like the 5 out of 10 killer. It's like 5 out of 10 map control, 5 out of 10 chase power, 5 out of 10 snowball potential. It's like everything's scuffed, but he kind of has, sort of, not really. This is what prevents him from being in D tier. Game breaking, he's the only killer in the game that can AFK down a survivor, which is what I was talking about before, which is kind of game breaking, sort of. So, he's got a teeny, itty bitty, tiny bit of game breakingness. He's decent. Whatever, it's fine. Alright, now we get on to the trash. They're not F tier, but the, you know, not quite yet spoiled bread. And this is also a little contentious. Some people will say certain killers are worse. This is just my opinion. I think Clown and Legion are just the worst killers in the game, with Clown being slightly better and Legion being slightly worse. So we'll do Clown first. Clown is bad Freddy. So Clown is Freddy if Freddy couldn't teleport across the map. Their power works in the same way. So with Clown, you throw the slowdown at the opposite end from where the pallet is, chase them through it, and they have to drop the pallet or you hit them. The only difference between him and Freddy is he can't teleport across the map, and for some reason also has to reload his power, where Freddy does not have to reload the power and can teleport across the map. This is the difference between those two things, which is pretty drastic. Clown, he's just not very good. There's not much to him. Like, there's really not. It's just you throw bottles, and the survivors have to drop the pallets early, and that's the entire killer. There's nothing else to it. Unlucky. So let's actually go over criteria. Map control. Clown has no map control. You can throw gas far away, but the problem with doing that is the gas doesn't do anything realistically unless the survivors are at a loop. So if you're throwing gas like far away to try to slow a survivor down before you catch up to them, you're just going to have less bottles when you actually start the chase. So map control, 3 out of 10. He has none of it. It's not detrimental to him, but it's bad. He has shitty map control. Chase power, his chase power is decent. It's fine. It's like a 6 out of 10. He forces you to burn resources, and he can use his power to hit you if you're in the open, but he probably would have hit you if you're just in the open anyway, like a normal killer. He can use it at loops to try to get you with a slow vault. If you're affected by his gas, you will medium vault windows, which leaves a lingering hitbox, so he can hit you there. Other than that, he's pretty generic. Like, again, just drop pallets early versus him and you'll be fine. Snowball potential, he has none. He doesn't have a one-shot, can't get to people quickly. He runs out of his power too quickly. You're going to burn through at least 2 bottles to hit one person, not even to down them. So, like, you can't down people quickly. He has no snowball potential. So just, like, generic 3 out of 10, average snowball potential, can't do anything. Game breaking, he doesn't break the game at all. He plays completely fairly. There's nothing special that he does that defies game rules. Just normal, generic killer. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about Clown. There's really nothing to him. He slows you down, but he has to reload his power, and it's really just, he's just bad Freddy. That's just the way to think about him. He's just bad Freddy. Unlucky. Alright, and now we get to last and least, the Legion, the worst killer in the game, and let me tell you why. Legion's power lets them injure you very easily. He moves pretty quickly, not like crazy quickly, but like pretty quickly, and can injure you. And then, after he does that, he gets Killer Instinct on any survivor near him, and then can try to chain hits off of them. The problem is, when you do that, suddenly a survivor's deep wound and you can still hear the tear rate, so the other survivors know that he's there. So all you have to do when you see someone get hit with a deep wound, if you're in tear radius, just run in a straight line away from them, and he cannot catch you. Right? Legion is the only killer in the game where his power incentivizes survivors to play correctly and spread out. So his power actually makes it worse for him because the survivors are now playing correctly. Right? Another thing about his power, he can't actually down you. So if you're injured and he uses his power, you just don't care if he hits you. He can't do anything. It just puts you into deep wounds, so it does absolutely nothing. So if you are injured, this killer has no power, sort of like Plague. The only difference is at least Plague can go into Corrupt Purge and become incredibly deadly. Legion has nothing. He just is kid with knife. Yeah, he's terrible. All right, anyway, let's get into it. Map control. So his map control is shit. Um, Unlike a stealth killer, there's no downside to being injured versus him because you hear him coming. And his power, even though it gives him move speed, he can't really use it to get across the map because then he won't have it for any sort of chase. On top of that, the sheer nature of the killer encourages survivors to spread out, which is the last thing you want as killer. You want survivors as close together as possible so you can pressure multiple people at once. Legion can't do that. So the only time Legion is ever effective in a map control sense is if the survivors are making bad plays. Now, some people say, oh, well, you know, the deep wound is game delay. The deep wound is not game delay. Because you have to go into your power, hit them, and then assume someone else is near them for you to leave them and go hit them. But the thing is, it only takes like 8 seconds to mend. So by the time you've gotten to the other person, they're pretty much mended anyway. And if no other survivors are near and you hit them with your power, then you just have to cancel your power and chase them normally. So it's the same thing as if they were just in a chase. So you have no game delay. His map control is like, you know what, I'll give him a 4. It's slightly better than just nothing because I guess if the survivors are playing bad, you can use your power to affect multiple people at once, I guess, sometimes, not really. Chase power. He's just a kid with a knife. He can get the first hit relatively easily. I say relatively because, like, you still have to go through pallets and break windows. Oh, and for some reason, because they thought this killer was too strong, you can't see scratches in your power. So if you lose track of the survivor, they're just gone, and you have to end your power to continue chasing them. So you're just kid with knife. And the thing is, if they're injured, you just can't use your power at all. It just doesn't do anything. It actually is detrimental because if you hit them while they're injured, they gain a move speed buff, and then you have to catch back up to them and then end your power and then chase them normally anyway. So, yeah, he has nothing for chase power. He's just generic 3, and at least he's a 115 killer. So he's like 3 out of 10 chase power. Very, very shit. What else was I going to say? I was going to say something about him, and I'm forgetting what it was. Something about his, something about the way that his power works. Oh, and also if you stab someone with deep wound, it just ends your power anyway. So yeah, that's also pretty shit. Okay, snowball potential, he basically has none. He can injure everyone very quickly, which is nice. But again, he can't down you. That's actually okay. Sorry, last thing I was gonna say. Again, because they thought this killer was too strong, when you just melee a survivor, it resets your power. It puts your power on cooldown to half cooldown. So if you just melee someone without your power, you can't then use your power, which is really dumb. I don't know why they randomly have this limitation as well as the scratch mark thing. It's just stupid. Just help him out. Come on, guys. Figure it out. Small potential, again, he has none. He can't actually down survivors without just walking up and meleeing them. So, like, your small potential is the same as, like, you know, just like a trapper without any traps. You just have to walk up and hit him. That's it. So, 3 out of 10. He can at least injure people, I guess. Which is kind of nice, but, like, it's whatever. And then game breaking, he doesn't break the game at all. They just kind of play Dead by Daylight, and that's it. There's nothing really to them. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Worst killer in the game. Their power encourages survivors to play correctly. The power itself has just random downsides, even though it's the worst killer in the game. Like, not being able to use scratches and having it reset on regular melee attacks is stupid. And when I say reset, I mean go on cooldown for regular melee attacks is just stupid. Again, having no chase power to down whatsoever is incredibly detrimental. You have a normal tear radius, so you can't. So even if the survivors are injured, it doesn't help you at all because you can't like sneak up to them. You just have to walk at them like a normal killer. No snowball potential at all. Again, he just has to hit you, and he has no game-breaking abilities. So that's it. It has been, holy shit, it's been almost exactly 2 hours to go through all of this. That is wild.